Hi, I'm Rita. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Life Worth Reading. Today I'm going to be talking you through every single book that I read in the month of November. It was overall a really great reading month, and I'm going to chat about the 6 books that I finished and the 1 book that I DNF'd this month. I'm going to start out with the only one that I do not own physically, and that is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. I really love this book. I have been meaning to read this book for a really long time. If you have been following the channel, this book has been on multiple TBRs. It has been one of the most exciting horror books that I was really looking forward to reading, and I am so glad that I finally did. This was such a special book, and I feel like it's one of those that I read at the right time in my life, which I really appreciate when that happens cosmically, you know, when you read a book when you really need to read it, and you just end up connecting with the story a whole lot more than if you read it during another time. And in this we are following, I don't remember their names. We are following 2 women, right, who are in this relationship. They are married, and one of them is a biologist, a marine biologist, a scientist, something like that. And she studies the ocean, the sea creatures, and all of that. And so she goes on a mission in a submarine, right? And she goes under the sea, and she is supposed to resurface after some time, and she doesn't. Her and her other crew members, they don't resurface for a long time. And when she finally does, things are not quite the same. Her partner that stayed does not feel like they are the same person anymore. And it's just really a meditation on love, grief, loss. And I really appreciated that. I really needed that. The writing was so beautiful. And I really believed in these characters. I believed in the love that they had. For me, they were real people. This was actually happening, and I really appreciate when an author can make me believe in a love story like this. And I just thought it was really amazing. I don't feel like the horror aspects were the best, or specifically maybe they weren't the best for me, but I don't even care. Like, I just thought it was really great. It was very strange. It was very surreal. It was a very different experience than maybe what I would have expected going into it, but I just really loved what I experienced. You know what I mean? I really enjoyed it. We were following one of the wives as they have stayed and as they're reflecting on what happened. But then we are also following the other wife, and we are following what happened to her when she was in the submarine and the tension between her and her crew members. And it was just a really beautiful ride, and I loved the writing so much. I cannot wait to read other books by this author, whatever story she puts out, because I really connected with the writing. And I ended up loving this book. It's like a 5 rounded up. I feel like it's objectively more of a 4.5, but I really loved my time with this book, and I feel like I really needed these meditations on falling in love and losing that person that you've fallen in love with, and the grief that comes with that, and love changing. And yeah, I really appreciated it, and I had a beautiful time with it. Then unfortunately we had my DNF of the month, which was The Book of Goose by Yoon Lee. I was so excited about this book. I don't know why, but I put in my head that this would be a 5-star read for me. I have no idea why. It wasn't even the synopsis. It was just something about it really spoke to me, and I wanted this to be something that I loved so bad, and it just really wasn't, and that just made me really upset. In this book we are following Fabienne and Agnes, and they are this childhood friends, kind of frenemies sometimes, that grew up in rural France in the 50s. And one of them has the idea to write their experiences, to write these really macabre stories, and to hopefully one day have a book published. I thought that it was interesting. Sometimes I really enjoyed the writing. There were certain quotes in this that I really connected with, but I felt like the story just completely lost the plot. I thought it was so boring and went in the direction that I really wasn't expecting. That just was very boring to me. It just completely lost me halfway through. I feel like I read I read like 2/3 of this book, so I DNF'd this quite late because I just thought that this wasn't what it promised to be. It just wasn't what it said it was going to be. And I didn't like it. I thought it was really boring, and I thought that this author could have done so much more with this premise, with his characters, and it just felt very lackluster. It lacked depth for me. It just, yeah, it's really upsetting, but I don't know, it really didn't do it for me. Then I read, finally, Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I love the Greta Gerwig adaptation of this book. I have watched it a couple of times. I really, really enjoyed it. And I was thinking about reading this book for many, many years. I actually owned a copy a long time ago when I was like maybe, I don't know, maybe like 8-9 years ago. And I really wanted to read it then, but it was one of those like mass paperbacks that was like this big. And I couldn't read it, so I ended up unhauling it, and I waited until I could find a copy that I really loved, which is this one, Wordsworth edition. I love this cover so much, and I finally did it. I finally sunk into this book, and I read it, and I am obsessed with it. I loved it so much. This also came to me at a time when I feel like I kind of needed it. It had these beautiful meditations on family, on joy, on trying to find joy in the little things, and it has so many like little life lessons. And yes, it's very Protestant in a way. It's very Catholic. It's very, not Catholic, right, Christian, very Christian in that way. It has a lot of God in this book, okay? And it makes sense because of the time when it was published, but I just really, really appreciated the message anyway, even though I am not religious whatsoever. I feel like I really, really needed some of these messages about how to balance work, how to balance life, how to be your best self, how to be there for your family, how to be there for your friends, art, how to make a life that is satisfying, that is worth living, that is worth being alive for. And I don't know, I just really loved it. And also like the drama between the characters, I really enjoyed. It's not drama because it's not very like, drama I think implies sometimes when characters don't treat each other very well. It's really not about that. There's so much love in this book, there's so much friendship, there's so much family values in this, but sometimes things are just messy. Things are just messy, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I loved growing up with these characters and following along on his journey, and I love them all so much. I am definitely a Jo at heart, unfortunately. Her and her fiery tongue, not thinking before she speaks, very much me coded, but she did try to do better, and I do try to do better. And I just, I'm so glad that I finally read it, and it is definitely one of my new favorite classics. This was absolutely 5 stars. I don't know if I've said that already, but I really loved it, and I feel like I learned a lot with it, and I'm going to take a lot of these lessons with me for the years to come, because though they feel very much stuck in time, at the same time there are some things that are just really, really valuable. So I know it might not be for everyone, because it does have a lot of morality in it, but I feel like the writing is really beautiful anyway. The characters are really believable. They're so very flawed in real ways, and I just absolutely loved this book. So another 5 star this month. It was definitely a good reading month for me. Next up, for my color wheel reading vlog, I picked up An Unkindness of Ghosts by River Solomon. This is a book that has been on my radar for a long time, but I've only very recently owned this book. I bought it in September, I think it was. So it spent little time on the TBR, but I'm so glad that I finally picked this book up, because I absolutely loved the Deep by this author, and I feel like they are just so talented. I loved their writing, I love their ideas, I love their message, I love how they incorporate real life issues in such interesting fantasy and science fiction kind of ways. They take this really current issues and they just put them in such a different and interesting context that I just fall in love with the creativity and originality of this author. And this was no different. I didn't quite know this before picking it up. This is actually, I don't know if it's a space opera. I don't know what a space opera entails, but it is set in space. It is set on this giant ship called Matilda, and basically it reflects the antebellum South. So there are all these different tiers of society, all the way down to the slums, from the highest of rich people to the slums. And it's in like alphabetical order. So if you're in a certain quarter, it's like if you're down on the R quarter, then you're much worse off than someone who is in, for example, the C or the D quarter. And we are following a main character called Aster. And she is a doctor, kind of. She is an apprentice of this really, really big deal doctor that is on the ship, that is connected to the general, the highest general. And so this book is basically about her and her experiences and how she lives down in the slums and how that experience affects her and everyone around her. And I thought it was so interesting. I feel like the middle parts lost me a little bit. I feel like this is also this author's debut, so I feel like the pacing maybe wasn't the best for the entirety of this book, but honestly that's normal for a debut book. But I thought that the concepts were so interesting. There's a lot about, obviously, poverty, about race, about how power is orchestrated by people who are higher up and depending on the race and all of that. And also a lot about gender, because some people in this world, in this ship, don't exactly have a gender, kind of like gender fluid, kind of genderless. So it's very interesting the way that this author approaches that, being a non-binary author themselves. It's very interesting how they approach this topic within this book. There's a lot of violence, there's a lot of sadness, there's a lot of brutality. So it's not all just like science fiction games and play. There's a lot of abuse going on in this book, but I had a good time. It was kind of like, I think I rounded up to a 4, but it was more of like a 3.5 because of the technicality of the plot having lost me a little bit in the middle. I didn't feel like the plot was maybe the most compelling in some aspects, but I feel like I really enjoyed this overall. I feel like I gained a lot by reading this book, so I definitely recommend that you check it out, because yeah, by putting something that happened on here and is still happening in different ways in the world, and putting it like on a ship and showing how even that change of context doesn't really change the power dynamics or the way that some people think, was very, very interesting. And I really recommend this book, and I cannot wait to continue on reading the backlist of this author, because I have a lot of really interesting reads ahead of me, I think. I really enjoyed this. Then for that challenge, I also read On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong, another book that has been on my radar for years and years and years. Also kind of a recent addition to the TBR. I feel like about this over the summer, so not a long time here, but definitely a long time on my radar. And I also liked this book. I feel like I expected a little bit more out of it, maybe because the hype is just so high for this one. I feel like I maybe expected a little bit more. But in this, we're following our main character, who is writing a letter to his Vietnamese mother, who cannot read English, so you know that she'll never read this letter. And he touches on a lot of aspects, on identity, on your past, your roots, how your family's trauma becomes your own, how to navigate all of that, also how to navigate being queer, how to navigate not being white in the United States. And there was also a lot about drug use and a specific relationship that this main character went through that I thought was really uncomfortable to read. Obviously that's the point, but I just really wasn't expecting it. And I feel like when I hear about this book, people never touch on that, so I wanted to touch on that and say that plays a big part of this book. And if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should reconsider, because it really is a big part of this book that I was not expecting. So also kind of brutal sometimes. There's also a lot of like underlying violence and abuse, but it was also very beautiful, and the writing is really great. obviously the hype is real surrounding that, but I don't know, I feel like I expected a little bit more. This was also like rounded up to a 4, but I feel like I wanted a little bit more out of it. I don't know what that is, but I wanted something a little bit more. But still, it was a great book and I'm glad that I finally read it. Another one of my favorite books this month was Assassin's Quest, which I have just very recently finished, and I am just so excited about this. Oh my god, what a time to be alive. I can't believe I finally finished this trilogy. This has been such a huge part of my reading year, and I loved every single second of this book. I feel like my favorite was still the second book now that I'm looking back on it and I have the 3 books in front of me. I feel like Royal Assassin was maybe my favorite because of the plot was just so good. But this one, it was such a journey. I went on such a journey with these characters over the entire trilogy, but specifically this one because what a giant ass book. And I think about these characters all the time. Like I loved this so much. This was definitely like, I don't know if you can tell, this is a 5-star book, a 5-star trilogy. I'm obsessed with it. And I cannot believe that it's over, but it was definitely like the highlight of my reading year, and just so good, just so fucking good. Like this is some good fucking food. Like I'm obsessed with it. The ending, I didn't like some things that happened. Not the things that happened, but the way that this author told me how things were happening. That wasn't great, but honestly nothing could take me away from the experience of reading this, and I loved it with all my heart. And finally, I'm not going to give you a rating because this book is for a vlog that hasn't come out yet, but I do want to tell you that I have read Filthy Animals by Brendan Taylor, and I do have a lot of thoughts. So you will want to watch my next episode of TBR Destruction Project, but this is another book that I finished this month, and thoughts were had. So you wait for that one. Okay, so here are the 7 books, there's one missing, that I finished in the month of November. It was a great reading month for me. I had 3 5-stars, which hasn't happened in a while. I had 1 DNF, but other than that, I didn't have any other books that I really disliked. So it was a good time, and I cannot wait for this last month of reading of the year. I'm just so excited about wrapping up 2024 and starting in on all my 2025 reads. That is so exciting to me. And I hope that you've had a great reading month as well. Let me know which one was your favorite book of the month so far. And I hope that December is great as well. With that being said, if you did enjoy watching this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. And I'll see you in my next video. I hope you have a nice day, and always remember that life is worth reading.